Warning. The following fanfic reading contains spoilers for Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, Trials and Tribulations, and Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Viewers' discretion is advised.
Once Upon a Christmas. Written by Ultraviolet Ink. December 16th, 3:45 p.m. The Wrights apartment, 2019.
Sorry, Truce, but Mr. Edgeworth, he just doesn't really do Christmas?
Trucy tilted her head as she momentarily stopped working on the Christmas party invitations. She had already finished her Auntie Maya's, as well as Pearl's and her Uncle Larry's. She was in the middle of working on her Uncle Miles.
What do you mean, Daddy?
She asked before bulging her eyes.
Oh, wait! Is he actually Jewish? I need to figure out how to draw a menorah.
Her daddy just blinked before shaking his head.
No, it's not that. But kudos to you for being inclusive.
Oh, then what do you mean Uncle Miles doesn't do Christmas?
Her daddy sighed and furrowed his brows. His mouth was drawn in a tight line.
How do I say this?
Trucy tilted her chair closer to him and simply stared as she anticipated his answer.
Well, it makes him sad. You know how sometimes you get sad when you think about your old daddy?
She nodded and gulped. At first, she hoped that he would come back for her. Not that she didn't dislike her new daddy. It still hurt her when he left her alone. And as the months went on and on, she started to realize that he wasn't going to come back anytime soon. Not that she was mad at her old daddy, but it still would sting. The thought that he didn't think to bring her with him. That he just left her on her own.
Well, he gets sad too around this time. He gets sad because he lost his daddy too around this time. He was around your age too.
What?
Trucy slammed her hands on the table.
That's horrible!
Her lips started to tremble. The thought of that horrible event and the fact that it closely resembled what happened to her was overwhelming.
Uncle Miles knows exactly what I'm going through. That's so sad. I'm going to make him a card, so he won't be as sad around Christmas.
Her daddy chuckled and ruffled her hair.
I think you'd like that a lot, Truce.
December 20th, 8:03 p.m. The Wrights apartment, 2019. Miles was still talking with Phoenix after they had all eaten dinner. He noticed that Trucy had immediately disappeared. He very much enjoyed visiting the Wrights, despite the awful events that had transpired in the previous months. He swore he would do all that he was able to bring justice to Phoenix. He knew that the disgraced attorney wouldn't have done what supposedly had been the reason he was disbarred. Phoenix Wright would never have knowingly presented forged evidence. Miles just had to figure out exactly how he was going to help his friend. Despite it all, he noticed that Phoenix was truly happy with the young girl he had adopted in the aftermath. Miles would be lying if he said he didn't feel any affection for her. She was always so bright and cheerful, despite what had happened to her. Miles knew that Phoenix needed her optimism. He just wished he could do the same for the former attorney, that he could properly support him.
Right. Have you considered my proposal from a few months back? About looking into that trial? Making things right for you.
The smile dimmed from his friend. He folded in on himself and wouldn't look into Miles's eyes.
Edgeworth, I don't know. Honestly, I haven't really put much thought into it.
Miles crossed his arms and waited for Phoenix to elaborate.
I don't know if I should even try, you know? I think it's a sign that maybe I shouldn't have been an attorney.
Miles gasped. This wasn't the Phoenix Wright he knew. The man who believed in his client to the bitter end. The man who would fight for justice and the truth to the bitter end. The man who never gave up, even when the world around him already had.
Phoenix, this isn't you! You're stronger than this! Right!
Miles shook his head.
This isn't you! What happened wasn't fair. You were set up, and I know it. You would never do that.
Phoenix looked at him with heavy eyes.
I know that, Edgeworth!
I just don't want to hurt Trucy more than she already has been.
Miles looked down.
Phoenix Wright truly is a good father. I'll give him that.
Where is that man who never gave up, no matter what? Even when I gave up on myself.
Phoenix carefully took the prosecutor's hand and squeezed it to get his attention. His heart nearly skipped a beat.
Hey, don't give me that, Edgeworth!
He smirked.
I don't know yet. It's still really soon, but
I'll consider it, okay? I don't want to look into it yet. It's still too soon, but if you really want to help,
of course, I would do anything for you.
He desperately wanted to say, but he bit his tongue.
Okay then, Edgeworth. Soon, but not yet.
Miles nodded. Then he heard a door creak open just down the hall. Trucy quickly bounced with each step to the table where the two adults were sitting. Once she was in front of Miles, she held a handmade card to him.
I made you this, Uncle Miles!
She grinned as he took it.
Oh? Whatever for, Trucy dear?
Trucy always grinned whenever he called her that. But then she looked down at the ground, hiding her hands behind her pink cape.
Daddy told me that you always get sad this time of year, so I wanted to make you feel a little better.
Miles noticed that Phoenix sharply gasped and was about to say something before Miles beat him to it.
Well, he is right. But I think I'm finally able to move forward.
Miles smiled.
But thank you, truly, Trucy dear. Just looking at this card, I could tell you put a lot of work into it.
Trucy grinned and started to bounce on her heels, a habit of hers that Miles had noted in the short time he knew her.
Well then, you should open it!
Miles read the front of the card. It was dark blue with dark gray storm clouds with lightning, and it was raining. It read, "After the rain." When he opened it, he was greeted with a pop-up rainbow. Underneath was a pop-up drawing of him and Trucy holding hands and smiling. She even managed to make his cravat three-dimensional. Behind the rainbow, it read, "Comes the rainbow." Next to it, in Trucy's own handwriting, she wrote, "I'm sorry that your daddy is gone too." She solidified it with a drawing of a sad face. That's when Miles suddenly realized something. He never thought of it before that moment, but when he did, he could feel his heart break. Trucy was only a year younger than he was when she had lost her own father. She was lucky enough to be taken in by a good man, but she was still so young.
Oh, Trucy dear, I am so sorry.
Do you like it?
Trucy dear, I love it. Thank you so much.
The young girl squealed and hugged him as best as she could. Miles adjusted his position and hugged her back.
I will always treasure this, Trucy dear.
December 18th, 6:14 p.m. The Wrights apartment, 2020.
Is Uncle Miles going to be able to come here for Christmas?
Phoenix looked up from the how-to piano booklet, which was the opposite of helpful, in Phoenix's humble opinion, and at his daughter. She was working away at the new costumes for her and Mr. Hat. She decided to change the usual light pink to a soft baby blue, a change he couldn't help but wonder was influenced by him in some small way.
I asked if Uncle Miles is able to come to the Christmas party?
Phoenix knew that she was excited for the event, which he was sure to become an annual tradition, despite their small sizes. He couldn't bear to tell her what Miles had told him less than a week earlier.
Why do you ask?
Trucy crossed her arms.
Daddy!
Her jaw dropped.
He's basically family, and no one should be left alone during Christmas. Besides, Auntie Maya said she and Pearlie were going to be there, and Uncle Larry said he might bring Kendra.
Oh no, she isn't going to like this. Wait, Truce. I thought Larry and Kendra broke up.
No, you're thinking of Kendall.
She mockingly smirked at him, a little too much like Miles would in court.
Come on, Daddy. I thought you would have a bit of a better memory when it comes to your friend's special someones.
Okay, that was on him for dating people with really similar names. But to answer your question, he won't be here this year. I'm sorry, Truce.
Something in his daughter seemed to shift. Instead of her usual bright and bubbly self, she became stoic and simply stared at him, causing Phoenix's blood to run cold. She was as still as a statue, and she drew her mouth into a tight line.
What? But why?
Phoenix rubbed against his disheveled hair and sighed.
I'm sorry, Truce, but he said something came up. He said it was really important.
She shook her head and stared at the ground.
Was it something I said? I don't understand.
Trucy.
Phoenix kneeled down to her level.
Oh no, now you did it, Phoenix.
She looked up at him. Her big blue eyes were glassy, and her lips trembled.
Look, sometimes Edgeworth just tries to get distracted in work. I think he uses it to cope sometimes.
But doesn't he like us?
That knocked the air out of Phoenix. He didn't know how to explain this to the young girl. She might adore the prosecutor, but there's a lot Phoenix was hesitant to tell her. The year he was away was definitely something he wasn't going to bring up, ever. She didn't really know the extent of their complicated relationship.
I hope she doesn't know about my feelings for him yet. God help me if he finds out about them.
How was he supposed to explain to her that sometimes her Uncle Miles was addicted to working? How was he supposed to explain to her that her Uncle Miles used his work as an excuse to be antisocial? How was he supposed to explain to her that her Uncle Miles was in a toxic situation that still screws him up even today when he was a child?
How am I going to explain to her that Edgeworth uses his work to push the people he loves away? Trucy, he likes us. He sometimes doesn't know how to communicate it. Does that make sense? Please work, please work.
Phoenix begged to whatever god he could think of. Trucy stared at the ground and huffed.
I guess.
Phoenix's shoulders sagged, and he ran his hands through his spikes.
Hey, Truce, you want to go to El Dunes for dinner tonight?
Phoenix asked, hoping that the prospect of weirdly salty noodles was enough to cheer his daughter up. She simply shook her head and picked up Mr. Hat's head.
No thanks.
I think Mr. Hat's face is chipping. I'm gonna repaint it. She trudged off to her room and shut the door. Phoenix rubbed his temples and ran his hands through his hair before collapsing back onto the rickety couch. He covered his face with his hands and groaned.
Nice going, Phoenix. She really took that well.
November 13th, 11:24 a.m. The Wrights' apartment, 2021. Pearl was helping Trucy plan her upcoming Christmas party and a super secret plan that she wouldn't talk about on the phone. Pearl couldn't help but be curious, and Trucy told her that it was a matter of true love, which Pearl couldn't resist. In the meantime, Pearl was helping her come up with the designs for the invitations. The two young girls decided to work with light pink paper and a pen for the invites. Pearl was proud of her improving penmanship, while Trucy added glitter on the borders. Pearl looked up and saw a half-completed knitting project near her bed. It appeared to be a bright blue beanie with what looked like Papa stitched with bright pink.
Hey, Trucy, why does that say Papa? Don't you call Mr. Nick Daddy?
Oh, that's gonna be my Christmas gift to Daddy. He's been pretty self-conscious about people recognizing him and his spikes, so he started wearing hats. But he doesn't like how a lot of them feel. When I told Auntie Maya what I was going to make him, she thought it was a good idea. But she said that he might get weird looks if he's walking around with Daddy on his head, so I decided to use Papa instead.
Why would people look at him strangely with Daddy on his head?
I don't know. Trucy shrugged. Auntie Maya just said people might misinterpret it or something. When Pearl continued to work on writing the message inside, she was puzzled as to why Trucy was making this invitation in particular.
Hey, Trucy, why are we making you and Mr. Nick an invitation? Aren't you the host?
Trucy slammed her hands on the floor and squealed, nearly causing the glitter to spill. She immediately grabbed Pearl's wrist and dragged her into the closet. When Pearl was about to ask what she was doing, her friend immediately shushed her and turned on the closet light.
That's a part of the plan! I'm going to get Daddy a special someone!
If someone told Pearl that just a few years ago, she would have been ecstatic on behalf of her cousin. She would have been the first one to plan Mr. Nick and Mystic Maya's grand fairy tale wedding. However, with age, one matures. That and Mystic Maya held an intervention for the young medium when she tried using Mr. Edgeworth's credit card to send her and Mr. Nick on a romantic trip to Hawaii.
Who's Mr. Nick's special someone?
Uncle Miles!
Mr. Edgeworth?
Pearl wrinkled her nose.
But Mystic Maya says he's emotionally constipated.
You haven't seen them, Pearly! Seriously! I can tell they both like each other. Like.
But how?
Uncle Miles always tries to call Daddy to check on him, ever since he was disbarred. Sometimes I hear him and Daddy talk about how they're going to prove him innocent. They care about each other a lot, and Uncle Miles always visits whenever he's in LA. Sometimes Uncle Miles takes me and Daddy to Europe during summer vacation. Pearl bit her thumb.
How do you know that means there is special someone? What if Mr. Edgeworth and Mr. Nick's relationship is like Mr. Nick and Mystic Maya's?
Oh, I can definitely prove that. Trucy grinned. Daddy became a lawyer in the first place just to talk to Uncle Miles again. He even saved Uncle Miles.
Just like a fairy tale prince.
Yeah, but that's not all. When Daddy fell into Eagle River, Uncle Miles flew in from Europe immediately and he helped Daddy defend Sister Iris.
I remember that!
Pearl nodded.
No one does that unless they really mean something to them.
Exactly! They like each other a lot, but they're too scared to fess up to their feelings, which is why we had to help them.
How are we going to do that?
Trucy pulled out her cell phone and started to dial a number. She put it on speaker and pressed her finger to her mouth. Pearl nodded and clamped her hands over her mouth.
Trucy, dear? Is everything okay?
Hi, Uncle Miles. Everything is fine. I just wanted to talk to you.
Oh?
Yeah. Last year, I figured we invited you to the Christmas party too late, so I thought I would ask you earlier ahead of time. Then you can clear your schedule ahead of time, and then you won't have to worry about missing it.
That's very diligent of you, Trucy, dear.
Yeah, and I remembered something else. Remember how you said you were nervous about leaving Pess alone for long periods of time?
Yes, I do hate leaving her alone.
I figured. What if we celebrate at your house this year?
Trucy grinned.
Then Pess wouldn't be alone and I can make her a gift and we can all be together. What do you think, Uncle Miles?
Oh? At my home?
Only if that's okay, of course. I don't want to make you do something that would make you feel awkward. It'd be super fun since you've been so busy, and then you wouldn't have to worry about having to drive all the way to our apartment. You wouldn't even have to worry about decorating or food because Pearlie and I always worry about that kind of stuff. We are artists after all. Uncle Larry said so.
Well, Larry is a professional. Trucy, dear, what inspired this idea of yours?
Well, if you hosted the party, you could schedule it on your own terms so that you wouldn't have to rearrange your schedule. Then you can guarantee being there. And this will be Pess's first Christmas. I have to be a good big sister and show her what she ought to expect regarding gifts. And I think Daddy would really like it a lot.
Trucy started to bounce on top of her knees.
I think this will really cheer him up this year. Because I think he's been really lonely, and you always make him really, really happy.
Oh?
Pearl nearly squealed behind her hands and decided to wiggle her feet to get the energy out. She could practically hear Mr. Edgeworth blushing on the other line.
Romantic? This is just like those romance novels Mystic Maya gave me. I can't wait until I'm old enough for my special someone.
Well then. You do make a valid argument, Trucy, dear.
He said. Pearl realized she had missed some of what he and Trucy were talking about.
Well, it'd be best to have a Christmas party on Christmas. The usual suspects, I assume?
Of course!
Trucy nodded.
You should also invite Auntie Fran. I think she'd really be happy to celebrate with us.
Okay then. I feel like I can't force you and Pearls to do all of the work. How about you just worry about decorating? I'll personally send out the invitations and get refreshments and food.
How about we ask everyone to bring a dish? It could be like a potluck.
You drive a hard bargain, Miss Wright. I suppose I'll have to accept. And I'll have to tell Pess that she's got a very considerate big sister.
Awesome!
Trucy grinned.
Thank you so much, Uncle Miles. I can't wait. And I know that Daddy is going to be really happy.
The two gave their goodbyes, and as soon as Trucy pressed the M button, the two girls squealed as they bounced up and down. They tumbled out of the closet and could barely contain their gleeful giggles.
Trucy! This is really happening! Oh my goodness! We're helping Mr. Nick get a special someone!
I know! Now we have to work on the plan. We're also going to need a theme! A super romantic theme for the decorations!
Pearl pulled out a book from her sleeve. It was her most recent romantic novel, Once Upon a Christmas. She pulled some paper close to her, and she started writing out her plan.
I think I have an idea. It might just work. In this book, the couple kissed for the very first time under some mistletoe. It was snowing and so romantic. We could go for a Winter Wonderland theme. That could work. Everyone everyone knows that no one can leave until the people who met under the mistletoe kiss. Then we can make paper snowflakes and ask Mr. Larry to help us put them up.
The young girls held hands as they jumped up and down, highly confident of their genius plan. They quickly set to work to create individual snowflakes of differing sizes to attach to string. They only had to beg Mr. Nick twice to go to the store to get more silver glitter. December 24th, 9:54 p.m. Miles Edgeworth's condominium, 2021.
The girls really put their effort into this, didn't they?
He was first surprised when Miles had sent them an invitation to a Christmas party at his own home. In all the years the former attorney had known the prosecutor, a party animal was the last descriptor he would have for him. After weeks of asking what gave him the idea to have a party, he simply answered,
I thought it was a good idea to combine both of our efforts this year. And Trucy was right. This is Pess's first Christmas, and I wouldn't want to leave her alone for a long time.
Phoenix smiled as he watched Trucy and Pearls playing with the golden labradoodle puppy. They all were having the times of their lives. After everyone had opened their gifts, the party was starting to mellow out. There were a few more people than usual at the Christmas party. For one thing, Franziska managed to make it and even helped the girls with some of their decorations. Two young kids whose names Phoenix desperately tried to remember had also been able to make it. One of them was a nervous young man with a penchant for classical music and mixing up idiomatic expressions. Miles had told Phoenix about him. He was the former chief prosecutor's son, and in a way, Miles' new protege. He was polite enough to Phoenix, and he even reminded the former attorney of himself when he was younger. He hoped his career would fare better than his own. The young woman called herself the Great Yagatarasu. Phoenix had been able to reason that she was the Maya to Miles' Phoenix. She and Trucy had managed to get on like a house on fire. However, Phoenix was nervous at the antics his daughter and the Great Thief would get up to. He anticipated some more mischievous tricks in Trucy's future shows. Despite his own surprise, Miles hadn't tried hiding from the party, even when Larry and Maya tried encouraging him to spike the eggnog. Phoenix was glad to see his friend come into his own these last few years. It truly warmed his heart whenever he saw him with Trucy or Pearls. He could never get tired of that dry laugh that only he could make sound genuine. Phoenix shook his head to get back to his bearings. Miles Edgeworth was his friend. It'd be better to not ruin that, he always would try to remind himself.
I think Larry and Maya managed to spike the eggnog.
He then noticed Miles distancing himself from the party, his head hanging low and his hands fumbling with something in his pockets. Despite his own better judgment, Phoenix followed after the prosecutor.
Edgeworth? Are you doing okay?
Miles had stopped underneath the doorway to the kitchen.
Right.
He sighed. His eyes looked tired.
I'm doing well. Have no worries.
Phoenix crossed his arms and simply stared at his friend. They both knew that the prosecutor wasn't going to get out of this one that easily, especially around this time of year.
Phoenix, I assure you, I'm fine. This party is actually a really good distraction from, well, the incident.
Miles.
He simply shook his head.
Trust me, I haven't really been thinking about that. It's just...
Miles pulled out a glasses case from his pocket.
This.
What's that?
Miles simply took out the glasses and put them on, causing Phoenix's heart to skip a beat. The former attorney never anticipated that the prosecutor would look so handsome in glasses. The glasses were thin black half frames. The style suited him, in Phoenix's opinion.
I got glasses recently, and turns out I was only scowling at everyone because I'm actually blind without them. I don't really like wearing them all that much.
Miles, you can't just not wear your glasses.
Phoenix placed his hand on the prosecutor's shoulder in an attempt to lift his head up.
I know. I just couldn't find a pair that...
Miles gripped his arm and looked off in the distance.
I just couldn't find a pair that doesn't make me look like him.
Miles, you never really could break that habit of yours, could you?
Carefully, he pried the prosecutor's hand from his arm. Phoenix held Miles's hand in his own.
Hey, Miles, can you look at me?
Miles nodded and stared into his eyes intently, causing Phoenix's throat to turn dry.
I think it's a good look. I mean, it really does make you look really dignified. Right, when don't I look dignified?
Damn! Those glasses make that smirk of his endearing.
Anyway, before you interrupted me, I was going to say that, yeah, I see a lot of things. Sure, you might look like your father, but that's not a bad thing, is it? There's a lot of people you could look like in this world, and a good man is a pretty good one to resemble. I know that. It's just that sometimes I don't think I can do him justice. I don't know. I've changed a lot in these past few years, but I can still hear him in the back of my mind.
Miles, you aren't Von Karma.
Phoenix squeezed Miles's hands.
You're better than he could ever hope to be. You're working so hard to fix, well, everything. And I know that he would be rolling in his grave to see you working to fix the system that he took advantage of.
What I'm trying to say is,
you're working so hard to fix your mistakes.
I can't speak for your father, but I think he'd be proud of you.
Phoenix?
Sure, you lost your way for a while there,
But you really are getting better. You want to know what I see? I see a man who strives for the truth no matter what. He no longer cares about some silly win record. He's confident and gracious and kind, even if he wants to put up a hard exterior. I see a man who I greatly admire so much. Someone who is so good to my daughter and is working his damnedest to make me an attorney again.
Phoenix.
Miles, I can see that man with or without those glasses.
Miles smiled softly and squeezed Phoenix's hands back. His stormy gray eyes were glossy, and he leaned closer.
It seems we've accidentally stepped onto some mistletoe.
Phoenix sharply took a deep breath. He could feel his ears and cheeks burning as his eyes bulged. His throat was terribly dry and blood was roaring in his ears. He could feel his heart drumming against his ribcage, and he wouldn't be surprised if everyone in the world could hear its beat at this rate. His stomach rolled back and forth, and his knees felt weak.
Miles, I am so sorry. I think I know why Trucy and Pearl set this up. I thought Pearl's moved on from setting me up with Maya.
Miles shook his head and laughed softly.
Come now, Wright.
He smirked, which did no favors for Phoenix's palpitating heart.
Don't tell me your deductive skills have been dulled. Huh? Phoenix, let's try thinking about this step by step, why don't we? First, there was an obvious reason as to why the girls wanted the party to be here. Now, why would they do that? Well, they love and adore Pess. And they wanted you to be there? That's a good start, Phoenix. No matter what, they wanted me to be there at all costs. If they were trying to set you up with Miss Faye, why would I need to be there?
Phoenix's heart nearly stopped right then and there. He felt like he was in some dream of his hopeful fantasy, desperately hoping that this wouldn't shift into some horrible nightmare. Phoenix realized what they were trying to do.
Oh?
Miles's skin started to turn pink as he carefully brushed his thumbs over Phoenix's knuckles, carefully and slowly, as he cleared his throat.
I can't say that this is unwelcome. I don't know exactly how I want to tell you this, Phoenix. Let's see. Since we've seen each other again, I've been feeling so uncertain. I didn't know how to process this, but despite it all, you were always there. Everything turned upside down, but I didn't hate it? Everything has been so uncertain with you, but I strangely find myself not minding it. Miles! Only you can manage to turn me into a blushing, blubbering buffoon. I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, I suppose the best way to describe it is, Miles, thanks to you, I am saddled with unnecessary feelings.
Miles's face was so distractingly pink, his breaths uneven and unsure.
Miles?
Phoenix interrupted, causing the prosecutor to take shaky breaths.
Just shush for a moment, okay?
The two men carefully leaned in closer to each other before Phoenix managed to finally close the gap. His heart was practically beating in his throat, and his legs felt like jelly. Everything around him was so warm, and the blood in his ears was roaring. He held onto Miles's hand like it was a life preserver. Stability in the middle of overwhelming chaos. Phoenix could stay in this moment for the rest of his life, if he could. Eventually, they both needed air and separated. Miles's lips were slightly swollen and his face was burning pink. Miles separated one of his hands and stroked it against the scruff against Phoenix's cheek.
I don't know if I'll ever get used to that prickly scruff.
Phoenix's heart flipped at that. The prospects of doing this again.
If this is one of my dreams, I never, ever want to wake up.
I don't know, Miles.
He chuckled as he covered Miles's hand with his own.
I think I'm getting attached to it.
Miles rolled his eyes and started to lean in closer.
Shush and kiss me again, Wright.
This was definitely the best Christmas the two men had in quite a few years.
I know that, Edgeworth. I just don't want to hurt Tracy more than she already has been.
Tracy?
Tracy? Ah! Damn it. That's my fault.
It's okay. You wanna know what's funny?
What?
You're basically flirting with yourself.
Oh yeah, I literally just now noticed that. I never thought about that yesterday. That's very vigilant of you, Trucy dear. Dang it, I almost said Trixie again. I wasn't recording that, thank
The
goodness.
great and powerful Trixie. It's Trucy.
Trucy Wright. I mean, it's funny because Trucy Wright is a magician.
Is she? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
she is.
Yeah. Keep in mind, I've never played these tourney games. That's very vigilant of you, Trucy dear.
So it's a diligent.
What did I say, diligent?
Vigilance, you said.
I thought I was saying it, but apparently I wasn't. That's very diligent of you, Trixie dear. Dang it!
The great and powerful Trixie.
No, wait, that's Trucy. She's a magician. They're both magicians, so it's probably why you're so confused on both those characters.
I'm focused on another thing, but that's fine. That's very diligent of you, Trucy dear. That's better. Was that better?
Yeah, that was definitely better. God damn it, my voice cracked. Oh man, I need to get some water. Yeah, I had my phone go off and I'm like, what the hell? God, my freaking voice cracked again. Shit.
You know how I feel when I overdo it. Since we've seen each other again, I've been feeling so uncertain. I didn't know how to process this. Ow, hit a wall.
Bit. I'm like, Miles, are you sure you're trying to word this correctly with your confession of love to Phoenix? The Phoenix, right?
Well, I feel like he has been hitting a... Well, I feel like I actually really am hitting a wall. Like, Miles is, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Alright, try again.
How do you know that means they're a special someone? What if Mr. Edgeworth and Mr. Nick's relationship is like Mystic Nick? No, not Mystic Nick. Mr. Nick is not a spirit medium. Seriously, what the hell? Ugh.
I'm gonna try that again. Phoenix. What the fuck was that sound? That was fucking weird coming out of my mouth. What the actual fuck? Okay, I'm gonna try this again.